Now let's have another example on nested classes. We have our outer class here, which we'll call the inner class. Our outer class is class of animals, and we have our constructor here with the argument animal alive. We simply assign the variable self.alive to the attribute animal alive, which will be created as soon as we create our object. Now let's create our inner class here. Shift tab. A class of mammals. And mammals should start with a capital M. We have our constructor of the inner class, the init function here, with the attributes name, the name of the mammal, and the type of motion, so we write here move. We assign the variable self.name to name, to the attribute name, and similarly we assign the variable self.move to the attribute move of the mammal. Let's have another function to define some data about this mammal. So we write define display mammal. And we have our self here. What does this do? It simply prints using the F string, our quotation here. This mammal has the name, and we use self.name between our placeholder here, and can, of course, the motion, we apply the motion here using self.move. Let's go back to our outer class animal and create our first object, self.mammal1. The object here is created by inviting the inner class using self dot the name of the inner class, mammals. And we assign the attributes here, cat for the name, and walk for the movement or move. Now we have our outer class, an object mammal1 or self.mammal1, which calls the inner class. We need still to define a function here for our output. So let's have our shift tab and define a function called display animal. And our self here. What does this do? It calls the inner class method display mammal using the following syntax. Self.mammal1. Why mammal1? Because it is the object created. Self.mammal1.display mammals. Now we should leave the classes to create an instance outside classes. But before doing this, let's go back to the function display animal and just increase one print. Self.alive. Creating our first instance or class object here. Animal equals the outer class, which is animals, and the attribute of animal alive. And let's add equals animals are living creatures, or simply living creatures. Once our instance is created, it has the ability to call a function from the outer class. So say it calls display animal. Let's have our run here. Yes, living creature. This mammal has the name cat and can walk. What really happened here is that animal called the display animal Let's go back to display animal here. The display animal on its behalf printed self alive as it was given and called the display mammal function from the inner class. This was simply accessed because our outer class here called the inner class mammals. Of course, here we can add other objects. Let's have this as copy and paste. Mammal 2. Let's have it as a bat. And it can fly. Let's have another object here. Mammal 3. Let's have a whale. And it can swim. In the function display animal, let's introduce self.mammal2. Mammal 2. Let's do the same thing with mammal 3. The whale. What really happened here is that we call the inner class mammals to create the object self.mammal1 and similarly to create mammal 2 and mammal 3. Self.mammals calls the constructor of the inner class here. In the display animal function, we use the outer class object to call the inner class method using the syntax self.outerClassObject dot inner class method. Let's have a run here. Yes, for mammal 1, it writes, this mammal has the name cat and can walk. For the bat, this mammal has the name bat and can fly. For the whale, it writes, this mammal has the name whale and can swim. This is the inner class function displayed here, called by the outer class object, which was created by calling the inner class and assigning the attributes to it. This concludes with our nested classes.